The United Kingdom has officially moved to restore its economic ties with China through a major new trade agreement that is now shifting traditional alliances. This decision marks a significant departure from the unified Western approach to Beijing, and its impact is already being felt across global financial markets. As major economies move towards stronger protectionism, Britain's choice to re-engage with its largest trading partner in Asia creates a new and unexpected variable in international relations. For the United Kingdom, this shift is driven by a stark economic reality that can no longer be ignored. The nation has been facing a record-breaking trade deficit with China, which reached nearly £45 billion in the last fiscal year. Relying on traditional domestic growth and existing Western markets has not been enough to close this gap, leaving the British economy in a vulnerable position. Recent data from major financial institutions and global trade monitors confirm that this is not just a minor policy adjustment. The agreement focuses on expanding access for British financial services and legal firms into the Chinese market, while streamlining customs for high-value exports. Economic analysts in London and New York are closely watching this development, as it signals a shift in how a major G7 power balances security with commercial necessity. This move has also triggered intense debate within the international community about the future of the special relationship between London and Washington. While the United States maintains a strict stance on Chinese industrial influence, Britain is navigating a different path to secure its own fiscal stability. This contrast between two of the world's closest allies introduces a new layer of uncertainty to the global economic order. So the question becomes clear. Why is the United Kingdom, which once turned its back on Beijing, seeking to rebuild this relationship today? To find the answer to this shift, we must look beyond the immediate headlines and examine the complicated history between London and Beijing. That history began with a vision of mutual prosperity that many believed would define the new century. In those days, the relationship between London and Beijing was moving toward an unprecedented level of cooperation. This momentum was solidified when the United Kingdom made the bold decision to become the first major Western power to join the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. The move surprised many of Britain's traditional allies, but for London, it was a calculated step to secure its position as a leading global financial hub. That momentum reached its peak during a historic state visit by President Xi Jinping, which was filled with symbolic gestures of friendship. And the image of the British Prime Minister and the Chinese leader sharing a casual beer at a local pub became the ultimate symbol of what was called the Golden Era. At that time, the economic data also supported this optimism as Chinese investment flowed into British infrastructure, real estate, and energy sectors. Driven by this influx, British businesses also saw the vast Chinese market as an essential engine for their future growth, while political leaders promised a partnership that would last for decades. As a result, bilateral trade expanded rapidly, and the City of London was positioning itself as the primary gateway for Chinese offshore currency trading in the West. It was a period when economic interests seemed to outweigh geopolitical concerns, creating a sense of a permanent and stable alliance. But the promises of this era were soon tested by events that no one had fully anticipated, quickly turning the dream into a cold reality. The first major cracks in this foundation appeared as fundamental differences in political values began to surface. This friction became unavoidable when the internal political landscape between China and Hong Kong shifted rapidly. As Beijing moved to strengthen its direct control over Hong Kong to ensure national security and social stability, the long-standing principle of one country, two systems was fundamentally challenged. Because Hong Kong was a former colony under British rule for over 150 years, this deep historical bond created a complex situation for London to navigate. Due to this historical relationship, the United Kingdom felt a direct legal and moral responsibility to protect the democratic values of Hong Kong when its autonomy seemed to be at risk. This led to a sudden and sharp confrontation with Beijing, as Britain opened its doors to thousands of Hong Kong residents seeking a new life through a special visa program. At the same time, concerns over national security began to overshadow the previous focus on economic cooperation. Specifically, the decision to remove Huawei from the nation's 5G networks, driven by growing fears of data security and pressure from its closest allies, marked a definitive end to the years of technological partnership. Consequently, A relationship that was once defined by mutual profit was now characterized by deep suspicion and public criticism. Britain's transformation from a strategic partner into a vocal critic triggered a series of retaliatory measures from Beijing. High-level diplomatic channels were closed, and the frequent economic summits that once drove the relationship were indefinitely suspended. This period of silence stretched for years, creating a long and frozen winter in the diplomatic landscape between the two nations. As the disconnect grew, the absence of Chinese investment and market access began to take a visible toll on the British economy. In this environment, Britain's economic conditions worsened, and London eventually had no choice but to look toward Beijing once again for its own survival. This strategic shift by the United Kingdom was not a sudden change of heart, but a calculated response to a series of harsh economic realities. After leaving the European Union, the nation found itself navigating the global market without the collective bargaining power and the protective shield of a massive trading bloc. The long-term economic promises of Brexit were slow to materialize, and the stark reality of standing alone in an increasingly fragmented and competitive world soon became an unbearable burden. At the same time, the global rise in protectionism and aggressive tariff policies from other major economies placed immense pressure on British industries, especially in the high-tech and automotive sectors. With traditional trade routes becoming more expensive and less predictable, the nation's domestic fiscal strength reached a critical breaking point, leaving little room for error. Consequently, the massive trade deficit with Asia's largest economy became a gap that could no longer be ignored or filled by existing Western alliances alone. This meant that re-engaging with Beijing was not merely an optional policy or a diplomatic gesture, but a necessary survival strategy to ensure national stability and future growth. For the leaders in London, the primary goal was to secure vital investment and market access, while still carefully managing the significant and complex geopolitical risks involved. Therefore, every move was driven by the urgent need to rebuild the nation's financial foundation under intense international pressure and domestic scrutiny. Ultimately, it meant that Britain had to design a colder and more sophisticated new strategy than ever before. This new tactic is commonly referred to as pragmatic engagement, marking a clear departure from the unconditioned and idealistic era of the past. Instead of a broad and unfiltered partnership, London is now implementing a calculated two-track tactic that carefully balances national security with economic necessity. First, along one track, the United Kingdom is actively opening its doors to Chinese capital in sectors that provide immediate liquidity and consumer growth. By encouraging investment in the City of London's financial services and opening the market to luxury goods and electric vehicles, the government aims to stimulate domestic demand and maintain its status as a global financial hub. On the other hand, the doors remain firmly and strategically locked when it comes to the sectors that will define the power of the next century. Specifically, the British government is maintaining a strict and uncompromising blockade on critical technologies, including advanced semiconductors, quantum computing, and artificial intelligence. These strategic assets are now protected by rigorous investment screening and new legislation like the National Security and Investment Act, ensuring that long-term sovereignty is never traded for short-term profit. This dual-layered strategy allows Britain to reap the economic rewards of the world's second-largest market while simultaneously insulating its core infrastructure from any external influence or dependency. Consequently, London is walking a high-stakes tightrope, attempting to be both a welcoming trade partner in the marketplace and a vigilant guardian of its own technological future. Then, given this delicate balance, what kind of results will this complex and multi-layered choice bring to the future of the United Kingdom? As the fog of global uncertainty thickens, this bold experiment by London is sending a profound message to the existing G7 framework and the broader world. By choosing a path that prioritizes national interest over traditional alliances, the United Kingdom is effectively testing the limits of the current international order. This strategic move is being closely watched by other middle powers, who are also struggling to balance their economic growth with increasing geopolitical tensions. If Britain successfully navigates this high-stakes tightrope, it could establish a new model for international relations in the 21st century. However, This path is not without its dangers, as any small misstep could trigger a backlash from either the United States or China. The world now watches to see if London's calculated risk will lead to a new era of prosperity or a deeper state of isolation. This is because the UK's strategic move is not an isolated event, but a reflection of a global shift. Now, we are entering an era where the clear lines between friend and foe are becoming increasingly blurred, replaced by a complex web of pragmatic choices. Ultimately, the future will be defined by how nations adapt to this shifting reality while protecting their core values. And this brings us to one final question. In this new world of fragile alliances, can nations truly achieve economic survival without sacrificing their strategic core?